All right, we're gonna get started, and people will trickle in a little bit. We are making knishes tonight. I'm so excited. But for those of you who may not have met me before, my name is Shannon Sarna. I'm editor of the Nosher. The Nosher is part of 70 Faces Media, which includes Kveller.com, our parenting site, Alma, My Jewish Learning, JTA News, and the New York Jewish Week. These classes are being hosted thanks to My Jewish Learning's The Hub. So if you like gathering online and you want to check out more events, please check out My Jewish Learning's The Hub. Deb will add the link into the chat so you can go right there. And if you like the Nosher's content, check out any of our sister sites as well. So I'm very excited to be making knishes tonight with you guys. The recipe got sent out in the email, but we'll also drop it in the chat so you can follow along. If you want to bake in real time tonight, I hope you prepped your dough because you do need to prep it ahead of time, but it's a fast dough to prep, so it won't take a very long time. We are gonna make knishes two ways tonight. We're gonna make some classic potato knishes, and then we're gonna have a little fun with some pastrami and add some pastrami to knishes, but we'll also talk about all the different ways that you can kind of improv knishes and make them your own and add different fun flavors. It really is kind of an easy food to like adapt and put in what you like, your tastes, your preferences, and what you have in your fridge. So we're gonna kind of start from the last step of making knishes and then work our way forwards tonight, just so you guys can see the whole process and we're not like sitting here watching them bake and twiddling our thumbs while I bore you with stories of my devil children. Okay, so again, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I'm gonna get started right now and I'll explain what I'm doing. Kasha knish, I know my dad and my uncle, they love kasha knishes, and I love kasha also. Kasha is like a grain, very traditional in Eastern European food, but my kids don't love it. And so I'm making potato knishes because my eldest daughter really, really loves potatoes. So I'm sorry if you love kasha knishes. All right, great question, Liz. All right, so, but let's start from the very beginning without me singing any Sound of Music. All right, so this is my dough that I prepped just a little while ago, and then I rolled it out really thin. This dough is both easy and a little tricky. It's easy because you pop all of the ingredients into the food processor, just let it go for a minute. You can knead it out on a board for a minute, and then you wrap it in plastic and it sits for an hour. It can sit in the fridge for a few hours if you need, no problem. So it's very easy to make and it doesn't require a very long rising time. It's trickier because it can, when you're rolling it, kind of bounce back a little bit. And that's okay, it's very normal. You're gonna use it as your workout for the day, right? You're gonna really get into it, and it is important to kind of get it as thin as possible. Perfect is enemy of the good though, so get it good enough and it's gonna be delicious because you're making homemade knishes. So here I have my dough, which I rolled all out into this rectangle. And then here what I have, and we're gonna go back and we're gonna do all the steps together, but I wanted to show you the finished product, and these are gonna bake for like 25 minutes. So this is some potato that was just boiled and then mashed, sauteed onion, olive oil, and some spices. So I like to add a lot of onions, a lot of caramelized onions that I cook over a low flame with olive oil, a little bit of sugar. Oh my God. Oh, Marcia, already you're asking about the gluten-free. I don't know. I don't know about the gluten-free knishes. I'm so sorry. One more question I see is, can I record this? We're recording it, and we will be sharing it on our YouTube channel, and it'll get sent out in an email later on. So if you are desperate to watch it again, I mean, obviously, why wouldn't you be? Then there will be a way for you to watch it. I don't know about gluten-free. Yes.
One question that came in directly to me, I don't know the answer. Can I substitute white wine vinegar or red for apple cider vinegar?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I used white wine vinegar tonight. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, great question. I'm sorry, Marcia. I'm so sorry. We just met, but I don't know a lot about gluten-free baking, and this is one of them that I'm just not sure, because you really do have to roll it out. So I would Google gluten-free knishes, and I would always rely on people who are very familiar and comfortable with gluten-free recipes, as opposed to somebody like me who is very gluten-full, and I don't always have good answers to gluten-free recipes, and I'm very sorry about that. Do you need to use a food processor for the dough? You don't need to use a food processor for the dough. I mean, like, I like it because it's a lot easier than me kneading it out. It just makes it very easy. But no, you can do it by hand. You could do it in a mixer. Absolutely. Okay. Hi, Richie. Thank you for your proactive question. Okay, number one question we get asked when we do these classes is, can you freeze it? Yes, you can totally freeze it after you bake it. After the whole thing is baked, they freeze beautifully, as someone's grandma might say. How about whole wheat flour? You're making knishes. Why do you want to make them with whole wheat flour? I would not use 100%. I would not use 100% whole wheat flour in anything. If you really want to try it, you could substitute half the flour. The recipe only calls for 1.5 cups of flour. So you could do 3/4 cups of whole wheat and 3/4 cups regular. But I would never advocate for 100%. It's going to be very heavy and dense, and it's not going to have that lightness of a knish wrapper. So my feeling is like, if you're conscious of eating healthy, just eat less. And we're going to make small size, so you can just have one little one, and it's going to be delicious. Okay, more questions that came in. Should you take the dough out of the refrigerator right before you use it so it's still cold? It doesn't have to like sit at room temperature a long time before you start rolling it out. You can take it out a few minutes before you're ready to go. And if you're baking along right now, yes, definitely take your dough out of the fridge and preheat your oven to 375 degrees. The other things that we're going to have, oh man, Lynn, that is a very specific question. It doesn't matter. Good question. For another recipe, it might matter, but baking powder with or without aluminum, for this, it does not matter. And you will know if it has aluminum in it by looking at the ingredients on the side of your baking powder. There's one brand I know that does not have aluminum in it, but for this, it does not matter. How large did you roll the dough? This is what I do now. Let's measure it. It is around 13 inches long. I will not be making any size jokes tonight. You can make your own. And about 11 inches wide. Okay, now I'm going to get started, so pause your questions. All right. Okay, so we have the dough we rolled out. We have our potato we mashed with sauteed onions and some seasoning and an extra tablespoon or more of olive oil until it was a mixture. You're basically making like a mashed potato mixture, and I tasted it to make sure that it was seasoned enough. I added a little bit of extra salt and pepper, and I added a little paprika. So if you see that it has a little bit of color here, I'll put it under here, this one as well. You can see it has a little bit of a yellowish tint. It's because I added paprika to it because I decided I wanted it to have a little extra flavor. So I am going to start by basically rolling a log right in the middle. And you can kind of see that. And then I'm going to shape it with my fingers a little bit. Now, this is the point when you could add lots of other things to this, like kasha, spinach, goat cheese, Gruyere, ground meat, leftover veggies from your dinner, chopped up sauteed mushrooms. I can just keep naming things that you could put inside a knish. Sweet potato, plantains, I don't know, what can you put inside a knish? What can you not put inside a knish? Anything that you want. There's no rules as far as I'm concerned. So I'm making this log out of my potato mixture. And see, I'm kind of forming it with my hands. Does that make sense? Cuban sandwich knish. Yes, absolutely. Why not? We're going to do pastrami and potato, like a really good Jewish deli mashup. So you could add other things. Last year I did a leftover Thanksgiving dinner inside of a knish, right? Like leftovers, of course, are the best part of Thanksgiving. And instead of wrapping it in puff pastry, which you could also do, I wrapped it inside of knish. So I had some mashed potatoes, some turkey, cranberry sauce, sweet potatoes, just stick it all in there, and then it's like a little yummy sandwich of your leftovers. You could also do this anytime you have a bunch of leftovers in your fridge and you want to use it up, or maybe you want to make something with it and freeze it for later. Another great way. You have some brisket, you have some mashed potatoes lined up from a dinner, just stuff it all into a knish, freeze them into little portions, and then you kind of have like a little appetizer ready to go. I'm going to add a little bit more potato on top of here, so forgive me.
And a question.
Yes.
Did you use more than one potato? Because the recipe only says one potato.
So I faked it. I bought the wrong potatoes. I bought Yukon Gold instead of russet, which are traditionally smaller. So I used about 3 smaller ones for this, but the recipe was 1 potato. Yes, that's actually all you need, because I've made it a bunch of times and I'm always surprised. I always surprise myself and say, is this right? Is it just 1 potato? And it really is 1 potato. So it's pretty easy in terms of the prep. I'm supposed to ask for a recipe for rice knishes from my mom, childhood memory from New York delis. I've never heard of rice knishes, but maybe somebody else is on here knows what they are. I've never heard of that before. Okay, so as you can see, I rolled this up, right? And then I'm rolling up my knish in here, and I am going to cut off this excess, and then we are going to pinch them all up. So look, there are a couple ways that you could do this. You could cut rounds and also make them that way if you want to make really big knishes. I like making them a little smaller. And I also think that this method makes them a little bit more even and a little bit more uniform in the way that they bake up and their shape. So I feel like every time I teach a class, I'm talking about pinching it up. So I'm kind of just pinching it together. I'm rolling it so it's a nice even log. Somebody said that they have rice knish recipes. Share it, please. Absolutely. My surface was very, very lightly floured. Very lightly floured. Okay, so now I'm going to start cutting them, and I'm going to just cut them into even pieces. So let's see, how long is this again? It was about, oh, now it's a little bit longer. So 12 and, okay, so should be about this many inches. All right, here we go. I'm going to start cutting. And then I'm going to just cut them in half and cut them in half. Here we go. And again, I'm approximating. They don't have to be 100% perfect. So out of that log, I'm making about 2, 4, 6, 8. I'm making about 8 knishes. Maybe I'll make a little bit, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit more. Okay. All right, I'm just cutting pieces, almost like a cinnamon bun. And then, so now I have an end here, right? It's kind of pinched here at the top and another one at the bottom. So the one here that's pinched at the bottom, I'm gonna kind of pinch it close. And then I have this open top up here, and I'm gonna put it down on my baking sheet just like this. So the top here is gonna be open. That's okay. All right, and this bottom is closed. I'm gonna put it on my baking sheet that's lined with parchment. And then we're gonna start this all over again, and we're gonna mash the potato all together, and you'll see the whole process. And then you can ask me some more questions. Okay, so I'm pinching here at the bottom. Now, at this point, you could also add some additional toppings if you wanna have a little bit more fun, right? You could add some more shredded cheese on top. You could do some cream cheese in the middle here and do some everything bagel seasoning on top and make it like a little breakfast knish, right? Who doesn't want to eat knishes for breakfast? I do. All right, so pinching, pinching, pinching. I'm leaving the top open. You don't have to. You could close them, but I like to leave them open. It's personal preference. You wanna pinch the top and make it all closed? Totally, go for it. Okay, I have parchment on my baking sheet. You could also be baking these on a silpat. A silpat is a silicone baking mat. You can buy them on Amazon or at Bed Bath, Sur La Table, any store like that. I love them. They last a long time. They're great for baking cookies, challah, anything. But I'm just using parchment today, easy cleanup. And also it shows up nicer on camera. Ooh, with a fried egg on the side. I love that. What a great idea. You've never made them open before. I mean, make them closed. Make them the way that you like them, especially if you have the experience of making these. Go ahead. All right. You find knishes in lots of different shapes. you know, when I talk about round knishes, some people are surprised because they're used to the square fried knishes. But actually, round knishes are the more traditional shape. And they are a street food, in Eastern European street food, which really gained popularity in New York, came over from Europe, like so many American Jewish foods, were initially sold on street carts, just like pickles and bagels, so many classic American Jewish foods that gained popularity. And to this day, of course, you can buy a knish on the street in New York City. So for me, knishes are so quintessentially New York, deli, Jewish food, but they're really a street food. My mom used to say that one of the things that she loved about New Yorkers is that they were always eating on the street. And I always found that to be true. When I was a teenager going into the city, I grew up north of Manhattan in Westchester, Putnam County. And I would take the train in all the time by myself. I was doing theater classes in the city, and you know, I was a teenager, so I didn't have like a ton of money. And knishes were literally $1, and they were super super satisfying after you had been rehearsing for a bunch of hours. So they were always a go-to for me, but they were those square ones, the fried ones, not the round ones that you will find at, you know, a more traditional Jewish deli that's making their own. A local bagel place called Goldberg's, no relation to my husband, who is also a Goldberg, they sell them, and they're more like logs. And I don't know what they do to their dough, but it is super flavorful and delicious, a little bit flaky, and I think it has butter in it. I'm sorry, I'm just reading some comments. My grandmother used to talk about Yonah Shimmel's, absolutely, which is probably the most well-known knishery in the United States. There certainly had been more, but most of those closed. In fact, we have a nice, very short history of knishes. If Deb could share it in the chat, it's a nice read. We have a lot of food history pieces, which are so interesting. Sometimes, you know, it's obvious where food comes from, but sometimes it's so interesting to read exactly the evolution of some of the foods that you love and never really thought of before. So I'm brushing the knishes now just with egg wash. I'm leaving the tops open, but you don't have to, you can close them if you want. I'm sorry, Deb, go ahead.
Can you move your trays? I'm going to spotlight it so that people were requesting to see it more close up. Thank you. And then
I'm brushing all around the sides.
And there was a question earlier about, can you use an air fryer?
Ooh, what a great question. I bet you absolutely could use an air fryer for these. I don't have an air fryer. I'm not much of a gadget person, but if you have an air fryer and you're experienced with it, absolutely go for it. And then report back. Let us know how it goes, how long you cooked it for. I recently saw a recipe for like some little cheese-filled bites made with biscuit dough, and I bet it's very similar. So I would look for another recipe that maybe, you know, some kind of dough bite in the air fryer. Okay, so my oven is preheated already to 375. I've now egg washed all of these little guys, and I'm going to pop these in the oven, and we're going to get started on our next batch, where we're going to add some chopped pastrami too, and we'll start the process all over again. All right, so.
Shannon, how big are these going to be?
They're not going to be that big. They're going to be like, I'll measure my own hands. Let's see, I should have measured the knishes. They're probably going to be about 3 to 4 inches in diameter. You can make them even smaller. If you want to make really little mini ones, you just make your log a little bit smaller. So I'm going to get started peeling some more potato. I still have some mixture left over from before. Again, russet potato is really the right potato to use, but I forgot and I bought the Yukon Gold by accident. So I'm using Yukon Gold. It's not the end of the world. It'll be okay. I did see a question about sweet potato knishes, and absolutely you could do this with sweet potato. I think the really important part when you're making a knish is not, and really this goes for many different versions of a savory pastry or savory pocket that you might make, whether it's kreplach or burekas, is that you don't want to have whatever your filling is have too much moisture. because then it will, first of all, it will make the dough soggy and everything will leak out. So you don't want things leaking out. You want it to have substance to it. So you roll it and it's keeping its shape. So that's why just doing like spinach and cheese in a knish, I would not recommend that. I would suggest adding something like a potato or something that's going to hold it together. All right, so I'm just chopping these potatoes into some rough pieces and I'm going to drop this in my salted boiling water. And I'm salting it because potatoes need a lot of seasoning. Otherwise, they're very bland. Hey, Debbie, can I ask you a favor? Can you set a timer for 7 minutes? Okay, thank you. It looks like lots of questions. Where did you get your peeler? I've not one with seen this one. This peeler is very fancy. I think I bought it in Amazing Savings. If those on the East Coast may know what Amazing Savings is, basically like a glorified dollar store. But it's owned by a Jewish family, so they always have lots of good Jewish stuff and great stuff for holidays. So, but it's not a fancy peeler. Okay, so I have a couple of pieces of pastrami. This is not fancy pastrami. I bought it at the kosher supermarket. This is from Abel and Hyman, which is a kosher company. They really do have some great products. They have sausages, hot dogs, things like that. And I am just going to cut this into some smaller pieces so that I can top my potato mixture with this. All right. I have seen at many delis different kinds of meat knishes, and I really love them. I think they're very, very satisfying. Russets come in many sizes. You're right, but they're generally about this big. This is approximate. You're going to be fine. If it's a very small russet, use 2. If it's a nice big size russet, like a baking potato, it's going to be perfect. You might have a little extra, and that's okay. You can just eat it. I'm going to feed any extra potatoes I have to my 1-year-old son.
Shannon, does schmaltz make it taste better?
Schmaltz makes everything taste better. Look, if you want to like go the extra step, you want to saute your onions and some schmaltz, or you want to add some schmaltz to your potato mixture. Yes, gesundheit, as one might say, yes, you should do that. Go for it. Why are russets preferred? I don't know. They're starchier. Also, the preferred potato of latkes is russet potatoes as well. So I'm lightly flouring my board, very lightly, and then I have my dough that was in the fridge just now. Whenever I'm rolling dough into a rectangular shape, I kind of like fake my dough so it already starts into a rectangle, and then I find that as I'm rolling it, it's a little bit easier to keep that shape. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it makes it a little bit easier. Do you use kosher salt in the dough? You can use kosher salt in the dough, yes. That's what I use today. Okay.
How much pastrami did you use, Shannon?
What?
How much pastrami did you use?
I don't know yet. Let's wait until we roll it out. So let's see if I use the right amount, because I'm going to sprinkle it on top. This whole package is 6 ounces. So I would guess we'll probably use about 3 ounces of pastrami, but you could use more or less depending on your taste, right? If you want like a really meaty knish, you can use more. You know, if you want to have just stud it with a little bit of flavor, you could use turkey, you could use salami, you could use corned beef. You know, you can use whatever you might have on hand that you really like. I'm very partial to pastrami, and I think it makes for like a fun little riff on a pastrami sandwich to stuff it all into a knish. You could also, see, now this is where the workout comes in, all right? I did not work out today, so making knishes is my workout. Thank you. Arms, tomorrow I'll do legs. We'll see what we'll do. You could also add some sauerkraut into the mixture. You kind of want to drain the liquid because, again, I said you don't want to add too much liquid to your filling. If you're not kosher, you could add Swiss cheese or Gruyere and make it into a little bit of like a Reuben situation. Okay.
Shannon, people are asking some questions. If you don't want to make your own dough, are there any good shortcuts?
Yes, great question. Puff pastry makes a great knish dough. Absolutely, go for it. In fact, we have some recipes on the Nosher using puff pastry. I love that. Absolutely, go for it. And I have to say, I mean, puff pastry is definitely even more delicious. So it wouldn't actually make a baraka, right? Because like a baraka has definitely a different filling. So, I mean, unless you're making just a straight up potato one, but you could use puff pastry, and you could still call it a knish. I wouldn't use pie crust. No, I wouldn't. It's first of all, I have a little bit of sweetness to it, but it's the wrong consistency. It's not soft enough. It's a little too firm. But I mean, you could try it and see if you like it. Okay. All right, we have to wait for our potatoes to finish boiling. So if anybody has more questions, I'm happy to answer while we wait for that. And I'll tell you what else goes into this bowl, and we'll just set our dough aside for right now. I'll show you a little trick. I use it all the time. If your cutting board is moving around while you're cutting, it's so annoying. Take a paper towel and wet it and put it underneath your board, and it won't move around. You can also do this with any kind of tea towel or dish towel, or if you have something with like a little grippy on it, like a pot holder, you could also stick that underneath. So it's a nice little trick, you know, if you're rolling out a lot of dough or you're cutting things and your cutting board's going all over the place. First of all, it can be quite dangerous, but it just makes it a little bit more convenient. Debbie, do I have a lot of questions coming in?
Yeah, I'll just, did you make the amount of dough in the recipe, or did you double it? Because people say you have
I doubled it so I could make 2 different kinds to show you. And I was nervous about having enough dough for you guys. So I doubled it, and I did it all together. So if you want to double it for funsies, absolutely. I didn't change anything other than to stick it all in my food processor. How thick or thin did you roll the dough? So you do want to roll it kind of as thin as you can without breaking it. If I am measuring it, it's very, very thin. I can't even measure it. It's that thin. I mean, I don't know, this is an inch, maybe it's like 1/8 of an inch. It's pretty thin. You do want it thin because it's not like a delicate dough where it's like, oh, it has such great flavor. It's a little bit of a tough dough. You really want to get it as thin as you possibly can. Seltzer or water you can use. There's no, the seltzer makes it a little lighter. I used water today. I've done it interchangeably, whatever you have on hand. So it's going to be fine. All right, so here I have 1 small onion that I sauteed. And I sauteed it for probably about 10 to 15 minutes in olive oil. And then I added salt, pepper, and a little bit of sugar. Really low flame. I didn't want them burnt. There's nothing worse than that burnt onion flavor when you have it in something, right? Ugh.
Your timer went off.
Oh, my timer went off. Let's check the potatoes and see if they're done. So how do you, sure, all of you very experienced. I'm going to fork it. I'm going to stick the fork in it and see if it's tender enough for us to start working with it. All right, I think it needs another 2 minutes. In the meantime, I'll add my onion to my bowl, and we'll start to add a little bit of seasoning here. Yes, hi Liz. Yes, the recipe in the video, in the link, does shape it a different way, and you can shape it that way. I have since reproduced that video quite a few years ago. I like this way better, but those make a little bit bigger knishes. So if you want to make them a little heftier, like maybe the ones you would find at a deli, that would be the way to do it, and use a big round cutter, and then you fold it up. But I like the log. I think it makes them a little bit more uniform. They look a little prettier. And I personally prefer the smaller size. I think it's nicer, and eating more is always more fun than eating one big one. But that's just me. So if you would prefer to make them bigger, then absolutely go for that. How much sugar did you add for 1 potato? I really used a pinch. I would estimate about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon is what I added to the onion when I was sauteing it, just to caramelize it a little bit. I wasn't cooking it for 25, 30 minutes. I was just adding a little bit of caramelization to it. How do you reheat if you freeze them? I would let them come to room temperature, and then I would stick them like in the toaster oven or an oven at like 300 degrees until they're warm. That's how I would do. Can you use a sugar substitute? You don't have to use sugar at all. Leave the sugar out. Totally additional. If I don't know how like Splenda works for caramelization or if it works at all, so I would just leave it out. Yes, more is better, right? Isn't it more fun to eat lots of little things than one big one? That's me at least. So, okay. So we're gonna mix our onions with our potatoes as they come out, and we're just gonna mash them with a fork. I'm not gonna get fancy with like a ricer or one of those cranks or anything. We're just gonna take the hot potatoes and mash them, and then we'll add our other seasoning to them. And I'm gonna turn my oven light on so I can check and see how the knishes are doing. Oh, they're so cute. I really think the little ones are cute. Maybe when you see them come out of the oven, I'll convince you that these are really the best way to do it. Okay. Hi, Avi, way to be super on time. It's 8 o'clock. This started at 7:30, but fine. Deb will share the recipe in the chat for you. We've just been waiting for you to arrive. So thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Here's the recipe. The dough is very, very simple. You do want to prep it a little bit ahead of time. Right now, we are just waiting for our potatoes to finish cooking, and then we're going to mash them for our second round of potato knishes made with potatoes, onion, and some chopped pastrami. Okay. Other questions that might have come up? Yes, you can substitute club soda for the seltzer. No problem.
Are those different?
I know, we're all on Jewish time. We're all on Jewish time. When people are on time, it kind of freaks me out, especially like in Jewish circles. Because I think of all Jews as running late all the time. But when we signed on to the Zoom, there was already like 100 people in the waiting room. So you guys are all obviously just a very unique group, so on time. Everything bagel seasoning is so good. And I think that this is the perfect vehicle for a little extra everything bagel seasoning. Okay, so these knishes are not going to get super brown on top. They are a little bit lighter. So don't be scared when you're like, are these cooked? They're going to look light, and that's okay. I still think that they're delicious even if they're not super browned on top. If you make sauerkraut, do you mix it with potato? Yes, I would mix it with the potato, but again, I would wring some of the liquid out of the sauerkraut, just because you don't want to start adding a lot of liquid into your filling and have it start seeping into the dough. It could make the dough soggy, and it will change how it bakes out. All right, I'm going to check my potatoes again. Hopefully they're done now. Oh, definitely done. Okay, fantastic. So I'm just using my spider, and I'm going to scoop my potatoes out.
Shannon, can you make the dough a day ahead of time and leave it in the fridge?
Yeah, you could make the dough ahead of time. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here I have my potatoes, I have my onions. I'm gonna start to smash them all up together. And because I'm not making like mashed potatoes, so I don't need them to be super creamy or anything. I'm just making the filling. So I'm and I'm getting a facial while we're at it. Can you see the steam? So I'm just smashing them with my fork. If I was making mashed potatoes, I like to use a ricer for this. But this is super easy. You don't need a ton of fancy equipments or anything like that to do this. Okay, so I'm adding my onions, and now I'm gonna put my olive oil away. Okay.
Shannon, we have a couple of freezing questions. Do you want to do those now or later?
Let me make the filling, and then I'll answer all the freezing questions. Okay, so here's me measuring very precisely about a tablespoon of olive oil. You could also use schmaltz for this, absolutely. And I'm gonna add salt and pepper to taste. And I'm gonna add a little bit of paprika again for color. And this was a tiny bit of salt and pepper. I'm not adding a ton until I taste it because I don't want it to be too salty, especially since I'm adding pastrami to this, which can be a little bit salty. So I'm added a little bit of paprika. That was probably about, oh, not even a quarter teaspoon, not a ton. All right. So let me get a clean fork. Let's see how this tastes. The onions make it so good. All right.
Shannon, just a few people are asking it. Are you showing how to make the dough today?
I'm not showing how to make the dough because the dough is so easy. There's nothing to it. You're just throwing everything into the food processor and it comes together. That's it. Also, you can in the link that Debbie shared is in the video making the dough, so you can see it making the dough. But with a dough like this, there's absolutely nothing to it. You'd be so bored. Make your own schmaltz. I just saw. Yes, make your own schmaltz. I agree. Okay, so now we're going to start to put together these pastrami knishes. Again, I have my little wet paper towel here. I know it's hard to see it, but I put it down so my board won't move around. And I'm going to make my log again, just like we did at the beginning. Sorry, I'm going to use my hands. So I'm making my potato log, and then I'm going to add my pastrami on top. You could mix it all throughout if you want as well. All right. So let's see how this goes. I've never made this before, so I think it's going to be delicious. What could go wrong? Which I use the blade, but you could use the other plastic one also in the food processor. But I just use the blade. It's the same kind of. I make the dough for this knishes the same way I would make like a quiche dough, where you're just throwing everything in and you're pulsing it until it becomes a ball and comes together. That's it. It's just a few minutes. Okay, Kay says to check the knishes in the oven. I have them on a timer. I have 1.5 minutes, so you are right. They might almost be done. All right, so here I have my pastrami that I'm kind of putting on top. I'm gonna press down into the potato a little bit. And I'm estimating that this is about 3 ounces of pastrami, which might amount to around a half to 3/4 of a cup chopped. But again, this is to your liking. You don't have to do the pastrami, or you could do another meat as well, or no meat at all. All right. So I have my pastrami right on top, and now I'm gonna do the exact same process that I did before. But first, I'm gonna wash my hands because they're a little bit potatoey, and we'll check on our other knishes. All right, Kay, let's see how they're doing. Oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. Yeah, I think they're just about done. Okay, I think they need 2 minutes. They still feel a little soft. I know that the color is not going to be super brown, but I just felt them, and the dough still feels a little bit soft. So I think it needs to bake up just a little bit more. The instructions are 20 to 25 minutes, and I set my timer for 20 minutes. So, all right. So I'm gonna show you guys again. Here we have our log of the potato with the pastrami on top, and now I'm about to fold these.
Shannon, can you move it to your overhead so I can?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to fold this up. Folding it up. And now I am just rolling it. And I rolled it like twice. And then I'm going to cut that excess off. You could add way more filling if you want. And you wouldn't have to cut any of the excess off if you prefer. All right. And now I'm going to pinch it all closed, and then we'll cut them into circles all over again. Now, if you wanted to take up the pastrami sandwich idea up just a little bit of a notch, you could add some caraway seeds into your potato mixture as well, or you could add some caraway seeds and maybe a little bit of thick sea salt on top as you cut it and as you add the egg wash. How did you get your dough so thin without getting a hold? I'm not sure I know what that means, without getting a hold.
A hole, Shannon.
Oh, a hole. A hole. I don't know. You just have to keep kind of like rolling it out, and it's going to stretch back a little bit, and then you keep rolling it again. And the other thing is, it's okay if it gets a little hole because you're doubling it up when you roll it up. So if it has a little bit of a hole, that's okay. Okay, can you use the leftover dough? Absolutely, yes. Yes, look, I have all of it right here. So I can still make more knishes if I want to with all this leftover dough. I would like kind of ball it up a little bit and let it rest before you roll it out. Like you want to let the gluten rest a little bit, but absolutely you can use it. Oh, we're beeping, so let's check on our knishes. Oh, they are, oh my gosh, they're so cute. Also, I should not be using this towel. I'm gonna burn my hand. Whew, okay. All right, can you see them? Look how cute they are. You wanna see on my overhead, Deb? Okay. So without burning my hand too much, I can see they're a little bit golden on the bottom. And they fit in the palm of my hand. And they're a little bit golden and crusty on top, which is exactly what I want. All right. So I'm gonna let these cool and we're gonna finish working on these for right now. I'm putting them on a wire rack to cool. Somebody wrote in our Facebook group, which is a great plug for our Facebook group. If you're not already part of it, please come join us. It's called The Nosher Cooking and Baking, but somebody shared that they burned their hand recently and they put some lavender oil on it and it felt much better and it didn't have that burning horrible feeling anymore. So that's a great tip. I've also heard that if you burn your hand, which I do kind of all the time, is to put a cut tomato on your hand and it'll help take it. Have you guys ever heard of that? Anyway. All right, so now I'm doing the same thing I did before, which is I'm cutting it in half, and then I will cut it in half again, and then I will make some little knishes, and we will egg wash them. Oh, and the pastrami is peeking out all over the place. I will have to pack one of these in my husband's lunch for tomorrow. All right, so we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We have about 12 of these little guys. And look at all of the pastrami kind of peeking itself right out. Put the burning area in the flour, it works. Oh, and egg whites. So interesting. Okay, I never heard of that before. I am always burning my hand. It's not something I'm proud of. Okay, so again, just like before, I'm kind of pinching the bottom and I'm gonna start to put this on my baking sheet over here. And that's it. That's the whole process of making the knishes. Now you saw from start to finish. What other questions can I help answer? Cut open a vitamin E capsule and put that, oh, that's a good idea too. Okay, these are all really good suggestions. I think I need to like round up all of these ideas for what you do when you burn your hand making knishes.
And
specify kosher salt in the recipe. What am I using? I'm using diamond crystal. Regular toothpaste. Oh my God. So I've heard toothpaste, egg white, vitamin E. Lots of good ideas. Tomato, lavender oil. All right, did I miss any questions?
I think you did a great job. I would love to know, Shannon, how everyone found out about today's class. So if anyone could share in the chat how you found out about today's class, that would be
great. Please, absolutely. We're so glad you guys joined. We will be doing one actually pretty soon because Shavuot is coming up. Shavuot will be taking place around May 16th. I know it's because it's my birthday. So we're going to be doing a Blintz class in early May. We'll be sending out the date this week, so stay tuned. I think blintzes are super fun to make and seem a little daunting, but once you get the hang of it, it's a super, super satisfying thing to make from scratch. My kids love blintzes, and they're really delicious when you make them fresh. So stay tuned for that, please. And then we need some ideas for classes that you guys want to do this summer. So if there's something that you've been dying to learn how to make, please please feel free to email us at info@thenosher.com and share what kind of classes you would like. And I think I saw a question about talking about freezing them. So we didn't talk about freezing them from before, so let's talk about it now. So these knishes over here, these lovely little potato guys, they are very hot right now. So if I want to freeze them, I'm going to let them cool completely. And then you can freeze them on a baking sheet, just as is in your freezer. Stick them on a baking sheet, put them in until they're frozen, and then you can put them into a Ziploc freezer bag. That's one way to do it. You could put them into a container if you have a really big freezer and you have the space for it. Or you could wrap a couple together in foil and then put all of those foil packages into a Ziploc bag. So unlike another kind of pastry or dish that we might say, like, wait to do the egg wash and then bake them, I would just bake them all and then freeze them and then kind of just reheat them until they're warmed through. That would be my suggestion. You want to learn how to make stuffed cabbage? Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. There's a lot of steps to it, and there's a lot of different ways you can make it. So that might be a really fun one, especially for the fall, as we get to sort of holiday time. All right, so we're a little bit under time. So if you any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm gonna start egg washing these delicious little pastrami knishes and get them into the oven. How to reheat from frozen pieces. What's the name of the hostess? I won't be offended at that. My name is Shannon Sarna, and I'm editor of The Nosher. So go check us out, www.thenosher.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Jewish Food. You can follow me at Sha Sarna. You can follow us on Facebook, Jewish Food also, or make sure to join our Facebook group, which is The Nosher Cooking and Baking. People ask questions and share recipes. It's really lovely. And I would love to see if you guys made knishes. I forgot to say, if you guys made knishes tonight, please send me your photos. You can email them or tag them in the group or put them on Instagram. We love to see them, and we always love sharing them just so that everybody can see what everyone made at home. It's very, very gratifying. Thank you so much. That's so nice, Alyssa. I really appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight, and we will see you in a few weeks for blintzes. Feel free to email us, info@thenosher.com, and we will see you next time. Thank you guys so much.